Hey guys, it's Schwee again, and we're here with another story time. Hope you guys have liked these videos. If not, I understand they're not for everyone. I just go over what has happened in my life, or at least my friends' lives. So this time, I'll actually be going into a few stories about when I worked in the jail system. Some people definitely ask me, "Oh, are you a corrections officer or anything like that?" Technically, yes. However, no. I was actually a deputy for where I used to live. It was its own thing. I would go out in the street and things like that at the same time, but to me, I was usually in the jail just because that was also kind of easier. Um, at any given time, yes, I could have dealt with crazy stuff like riots and things like that. And I will tell you guys later on the worst and kind of leading cause on why I sort of left that position to go to a different place and kind of drop being a deputy altogether. But let's get into the story, shall we? Um, let's start at the beginning. Honestly, it was a complete accident on how I even got the job in the first place. Now, a lot of people say, Shwee, what do you mean by accident? I mean literal accident. I went in, I was also in college still, and I kind of needed a change in scenery because I was still a lieutenant for the shipyard. Didn't really care too much for that job anymore. It kind of got dull and kind of monotonous, I could say. But it got to a point where I went in. I sat in front of a panel of three individuals. One was a civilian, and the other two were basically deputies. However, one of the deputies was like a background investigator at the same time, and one was a um, what is it? A lieutenant, basically. Background investigator, lieutenant, and civilian. Cool. So I go in not knowing what in the world I was going to expect. I stood, waited for them to say you could sit down. I sat down properly. Yes, there's a way to sit down properly when it comes to reviews. If you know, you know. If you don't, look it up. But I sat there, and the female lieutenant kind of sat there, looked me up and down. They started asking me questions. I thought I was doing pretty well. I was like, yeah, I'm going to get this job easy. And if you're wondering what the job was, it was actually basically security for the courthouse. Yes, I know, another security position. Sue me. But um, essentially it was a part-time position so I could still do my college work and at the same time have some kind of revenue because I was broke. And we carry on by explaining, how the job would be and things like that. And I was like, oh, cool. This sounds super easy slash good way to get my foot in the door of the legal world, possibly. And mind you, at the time I was 22 years old. And the lieutenant, kind of still staring me up and down, goes, "Why didn't you apply to be a deputy?" And I simply said, "Because I did not know that was a thing." And she kind of just sat there, looked for a little longer, looked at the other guys. They all kind of shook their head in agreement. And basically, she said, "I'm going to take your resume and we're going to put you in for a deputy position." I said, "Cool. I don't know what that means. I'm probably not going to get that job anyway, so who cares?" And yeah, apparently I aced the interview. And the other background investigator, who was really nice, I love that lady, she sat there, said, "Hey, we'll be in contact, and don't you worry, you did great." Left, went home, I was excited, giddy, had to take a few pictures, whatever. And fast forward like 2 3 days later, I get a call. "Hey, by the way, you got the job and you'll be starting on this day." Cool. The only issue is they wanted me to start literally like 3 days later. Mind you, still a lieutenant for the shipyard, still in college, so I had to kind of figure it out. I'm not going to say this was my proudest moment because obviously you should definitely give your employers some kind of heads up. Hey, by the way, I'm leaving in a few, whatever. Um, Typically, people give 2 week notices. I gave a 2 day notice. So, yeah, it went over actually pretty smooth for everything considered. They were sad, concerned because obviously I couldn't really find a replacement and things like that to take the lieutenant position. However, we were in luck because there was actually 2 lieutenants at the time as well as the captain. So it kind of evened itself out. They would still have enough time to kind of find somebody to take my spot and, start the security position at the courthouse. And I'm kind of learning everything. They're sitting there looking at me like, oh, who's this young guy? Why is he here? And it's funny because even the deputies at the time said, oh, I heard that you're going to become a deputy now. And I was like, yeah, hopefully. However, I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. So, again, fast forward another like 3 weeks. Mind you, I'm there for a month. And they say, hey, you got the position. You're going to be starting in the jail next month. Cool. Issue being, I get into a car accident, and it wasn't anything crazy. It was actually a pretty minor accident, and the girl who hit me, she was 16, so she was freaking out more than me. And I was in a sports car at the time, so yeah, that didn't really go too well for her insurance company. So end up, getting everything fixed. The day comes, they give me my uniforms and stuff like that after I finish in processing. And for our in process, it was a little different because the first day you sit there and you guys are kind of chattering, whatever. But then you kind of get to a point where the second day comes and right then and there they say, hey, by the way, you're getting pepper sprayed today, so I hope you brought something that you don't really care to wear. Hmm, okay, great, thanks, bud. So yeah, end up getting pepper sprayed that day. And the good news is, I actually got pepper sprayed like 3 or 4 times prior to this. And no, it's not because I did anything wrong. It was actually because you have to get pepper sprayed in order to be any kind of security guard. At least the place that I was. Some other places, maybe not. But for me, yes, it was a you have to do it if you're going to work here. If not, you get the boot. So, my a-okay attitude, I sat there and said, screw it, I'm gonna sit there and get pepper sprayed today. And I took it like a champ. I'm not gonna lie to you. Even the guys that were conducting it, they started questioning why I was actually doing so well. Yes, it burned. Yes, I kind of like weeped, but I had to fight for my keys and stuff like that. And they kind of realized that I wasn't getting affected nearly as bad as the other guy. And the other guy, he was sitting there cussing up a storm and things like that. And I should at this point tell you guys that there was captains and lieutenants that were watching. So, I tried to act all cool even though I know that it burned so bad. So fast forward after NDOC, which was 3 days, I put on the uniform, go into the jail, and mind you, at this point in time, we worked in the jail before we went to any kind of like academy for law enforcement, which in hindsight probably wasn't the best idea for some people, but for me it was relatively okay because I'm one of those guys. You tell me to do something, I'm going to follow it, and afterwards I'll kind of engage at my leisure. So, first day, it's cool. However, they then tell me, hey, by the way, you're not going to day shift, you're going to night shift. So I had to stay up the whole night prior to that just to even attempt to stay up during my shift. And yeah, I get one of the relatively calm areas. However, I mean, it's a whole floor. I had like 160 inmates that I had to look after, and they kind of knew that I was new, so they would do the whole, "Oh, hey, I want an inmate release form," and things like that. The jokes that you normally get. And I sat there, said, "Yeah, sure, I'll try and find one of those," knowing goodness well that that was a complete lie. And yeah, I will say my first night relatively went well. Now, fast forward like a year or two into my stay at the lovely jail, I turned out to be like one of the mental health whisperers, I guess you could say. And that literally just means that they kept putting me in all the mental health pods as well as the suicide pod. And yeah, quick disclaimer, if you ever feel that way, there are resources. Please seek them. Um, Apparently, I was that resource in there because I would always talk to the guys, and they would genuinely be pretty cool and like they would kind of get their stuff together after I talked to them, which, they gave me a little pride. So, um, yeah, finished all that, kind of went back to a normal rotation, and mind you, this was before the military and all that stuff. So um, I would kind of just bounce back and forth from the maximum side to the minimum side, and vice versa. On this particular day, we end up getting the minimum security side of the jail, which was pretty cool because honestly, you could do your entire check in less than like 10 minutes, and then you had all that time to kind of just go do whatever. But this particular night actually was more of an issue. And yes, this is a few years down the line. I would switch back and forth from days to night. This particular time, I was actually on nights, and I had a really cool sergeant. Love that guy to death. He's actually the reason why I'm attempting to finish my college now. But fast forward to that night, and they say, "Hey, by the way, we have a person that's en route to your floor." Cool, whatever. Not the first time. However, then they call me and they go, "Hey, yeah, the person that's coming up to you guys right now, he's over 500 pounds." What? Yes, he's over 500 pounds. He's in a specialized gurney because he cannot fit in any of our wheelchairs, and we're going to put him in a special room. Okay, cool. So, not worrying about much. They bring the guy up. He's angry. Turns out that he like hits his caretakers. And guys, I'm just saying, not fat shaming, nothing like that. But if you're over 500 pounds and you need caretakers to take care of you, you probably shouldn't hit them and assault them in any kind of way. A simple thank you would probably be in order or go away. But that's not for me to say, you know. So we fast forward. That night, he sit there. He's angry. He kind of goes to sleep because he can't really do much else. He's still in the same position. I leave. I go on a whole different rotation. I come back to that building and our guy's still there. So I'm like, "Why is he still here?" They're like, "Oh, he has a month." All right, cool. You have a month. He was in there for 3 months because he kept trying to fight people. And I don't know if you guys know this, but when you become a certain weight and you can't really take care of yourself, then you have to rely on others. So he relied on our nurses to clean him, wash him, give him food, things like that. However, his thing was our food, the trays were disgusting, and he felt that it was inhumane. And he would like 5 styrofoam plates of food for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Yes, 5. And when I say 5, I mean 5 of each. Um, so yeah, yeah. We got to that point, and mind you, we have to check on the guy, and I'm one of those people. I check, I look, make sure you're breathing, and then I keep walking. However, fast forward to me going to um, that floor again, And turns out the entire floor smells of decay and rotting flesh. If you smell that smell, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And yeah, it was basically because one, he couldn't really clean himself properly, and two, his skin was actually decaying on his body because it was getting smothered and not wiped or cleaned or anything like that. I know, gross, I'm sorry, but now you have to live with it because I have to live with it. Um, so yeah, ends up smelling up the whole floor, and the nice floor that everyone wanted turned into the worst floor no one wanted. And this was, the remnants of COVID and things like that. So we were able to get like face masks, and we would just bring face masks and things like that. And essentially, you could smell it through the face mask. I'm not gonna lie to you, it was horrible. And it got to a point where even the supervisors kind of thought it was ridiculous. So he ends up getting, his two trays because he convinced someone that he was underweight, and they would give him two trays for lunch, breakfast, and dinner each, by the way. And the whole place just smelled terrible. The reason why I bring this up is because while I was doing my little rounds, mind you, it's supposed to only take around 10 minutes, and that's if I'm doing the whole floor by myself. Walk past him, look, he's sitting there yelling like normal, and I don't even remember what he was yelling about. Probably something about, do you have games on your phone? But he sits there and he's yelling, my sergeant, again, love the guy to death, reason why I'm trying to finish my degree, ends up calling me back and saying, hey man, I know it's going to be bad, but do you mind, you know, coming in here with me with the nurses and getting him cleaned up? Now, if it was anyone else that asked me, I would have said no. I'm good. No thanks. Good luck. But I have so much respect for this man. I would gladly go to the battlefield, put my life on the line for him. So obviously, I say, sure, Sarge, I got you. And as soon as that door opened up, the smell went from 5 to 9 very quickly. And yes, I had my face mask on. Did not help all too much, gonna be honest with you. But he ends up, getting cleaned. The smell's still atrocious, and I have nightmares about that room, even, in today's day and age. But again, guys, care for yourself. I know it's difficult sometimes, but don't hit people and don't go to jail, please. So that's the end of that story. I say we can roll into the last story. It's not too crazy, but essentially it's why I left that field and why I'm kind of trying to pursue other things now. And it kind of falls into the realm of what happened to me and then what didn't happen afterwards. And, when I say this, some people, when I tell them this story, they're like, whoa, are you okay? And things like that. Yes, I'm okay. It's whatever, it happened. So, I'm in the floor, and we're on the max security side, and we're basically where the guys that go to the whole solitary confinement, things like that, they're in solitary confinement, and we have to go and search their cells and things like that. So they search everyone, they check everyone one by one, and we get to our last guy, and this guy is a handful to say the least. I had issues with him, but it wasn't to the point where I was like, oh, I hate this guy, things like that. But on that day, he decides that he's going to be more difficult than normal. And there's another guy who works with me. He was actually a really young guy. He was like 18, 19 years old. And yes, I know, 19-year-old and you're working in a jail, that's interesting. But Pays good, however, the mindset and maturity levels all obviously kind of depend on the person. This guy, he was good for the most part, but there were certain things that I even questioned, and the supervisors questioned too. But you know, that's whatever. That was above my pay grade. So the inmate decides that he's going to snatch the handcuffs and the key out of this guy's hand when he goes back into his cell. So now we have an issue of an inmate with a handcuff key and handcuffs still on. And he only has it on one hand. So, yeah, they call me in there and we have to stack up to go and get this, even though, in all honesty, the guy wasn't really hurting anybody. And if he wanted to get anything, he would have to follow our rules, or we could have just pepper sprayed him. Either way. But instead, we decide we're going to go in, and they put me in front of the stack. Cool. I'm one of those guys. I'm all for, going in and handling business. I will admit. I'm not a super big guy, but at the same time, I'm not going to let you really punk me. This guy in the cell, he's probably like, I would say 250, and he's like 5'6" on a good day. And I'm 6'2", and I just weighed myself. I'm 200 pounds. Again, I'm not, bulky. I'm not a bodybuilder or anything like that. But I would like to say I can handle myself in a fight because I've had to do that so many times. And again, this is after 4 years of constantly fighting people and things like that. So, it kind of, I was ready. So we opened the door. He tries to hold it closed. I grab him, or at least grab his arm, and kind of push him off of the door while trying to hold on to him. And he kind of runs to the back of his cell. So we all push in, and I grab the arm with the handcuffs still on because I'm like, I don't want that hitting me in the head. Turns out that he had other plans. He was actually stabbing me with the handcuff key, so I had to end up going to the hospital along with three other people. It happens. Um, I didn't really see much after that, but your boy, I'm okay. We're good. And yeah, that's why I left. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. If you like this video, cool. If you don't, that's cool too. I respect it. But this is Schwee, and I'm out.